Welcome to the Level Up English podcast, the best place to come to practice the English language, learn about the British accent and culture, with me, your host, Michael Lavers. Hello English learners, welcome back to the Level Up English podcast. Michael here. Today I've got a conversation with Martin from Rock and Roll English. We had a really fun conversation that focuses on the topic of embarrassing stories. So to give you a bit of a preview, in today's episode, we talk about some of our own embarrassing stories in life, some kind of cringy things we've done before. I also ask Martin about his embarrassing stories with language learning, which is really interesting. I think you'll find it a lot of fun. We also touch on some other topics, get to know him a little bit as well, but I'm sure you will enjoy this episode. I also ask about British people, how you can embarrass a British person, and maybe what you should avoid doing if you come to the UK. So I think that'll be important information to remember. We speak about a little bit about the differences between cultures there. But anyway, I hope you enjoy it. Remember, if you do struggle with your listening, you can access the podcast transcripts by becoming a Level Up English member. Okay, so you can do this at levelupenglish.school. Click on the members button. You'll have access to live classes, to private podcast episodes, to online courses, and all of the transcripts. So that just means you can read everything we're saying while we're saying it. So hopefully that helps you, and if you have any more questions, just let me know. But now I'm going to give you our conversation with Martin, so hope you enjoy. Hello everyone, welcome to the Level Up English podcast. I'm here today with Martin from Rock and Roll English, so welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, great to be here.
Thanks for coming, great to have you here. Maybe could you start by explaining a little bit about where you're from, where you are now, what you do, all the kind of basic info for those who don't know.
Yep, sure. So I'm originally from Essex, which is a place just outside London. I think, in fact, most people when they go to London, probably if they live in Europe, maybe travel with Ryanair and they go to Stansted, which is not actually in London. It's in Essex, which is where I'm from. So that's where I'm from, but I currently live in Sicily, where I have lived for the last 7.5 years, and I've been teaching English now for 11 years, and a few years ago I decided to start my own podcast because I'm a big podcast fan, and I was listening to Italian podcasts at the time because I was learning, or I'm still learning Italian, and I always just found them so boring. And I just thought, I really wish there was just a podcast where it was just fun, like friends talking about normal things that you talk about in the pub. And then so I thought, you know what, I think I'm going to start that. And that's what I did. And at the beginning, just a few students listened, and then slowly it's got bigger and bigger. So yeah, that's what I do now. I also have a podcast and obviously still teach English.
That's great. I love that motivation because I think it's the same. Well, yeah, when I think about the language podcast I enjoy the most, it's very similar. It's just kind of casual talking. It's not like teaching grammar and stuff like that. So I try to reflect that in my own podcast too, but I like that.
Sure.
How many podcasts, I don't know if it could be in terms of hours or more or less, would you listen to a day? How much do you like podcasts?
Well, it's certainly decreased since constantly working at home now, because I used to listen when I traveled to work, in the car or on the bus. So now I would say probably about an hour a day, probably, and that's normally in the evening where I'm doing the washing up or something like that. I was going to say the best part of my day, but I kind of feel bad for my wife and child if I say that.
The best part of your day that's alone, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. A good part of the day for me, because I always say this about podcasts, how I think it's a personal thing, because you put in your headphones and it's kind of like you and those people, and you feel like you have a connection, especially if you follow a show for a long time, which for example, one in particular that I listen to, which I've been listening to for more than 10 years, I feel like these people are like my close friends, even though I've never had any contact with them in my whole life, because it's that personal moment of just you and the headphones and the voices. So it's a moment I thoroughly enjoy of the day.
Yeah, it's a weird feeling, isn't it? I totally know what you mean. And hopefully people get that feeling listening to this podcast. Maybe they get the same feeling. And I don't know about you, but I find it kind of, especially in the pandemic where I've been at home a lot more, it has helped me feel a bit less lonely, where I'm not seeing so many people as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Because you just feel like, although it's not actual interaction, you're not speaking to someone, but you just, I don't know, you feel like you're involved when it's a podcast. I certainly do anyway.
Yeah, it's a nice thing. Yeah, I love podcasting. Nice. So I noticed, I had a look at your website, and I noticed you focus a lot on embarrassing stories.
Yeah, that's one thing that I enjoy a lot, because I always just think it's such a when someone tells you an embarrassing story, I always think it creates a bond almost immediately, because you show someone maybe you're vulnerable, something embarrassing has happened to you, and that immediately makes you like that person, whilst the opposite is true as well. If I come on here and I say to you, I'm so rich, I've got a Ferrari and my wife is the most beautiful woman in the world, then you will think he's a complete idiot. Like, I hate that person. But on the flip side, when you talk about the bad things, it creates a feeling with that person. And so, it's something that I enjoy a lot, and something I think that in language as well, you use stories is what language is. I think it's like the way we communicate. So when, for example, I go to the pub with some friends, sit down, talk about your lives, and again, no one's interested in the wonderful things. No one's interested in, I got a promotion at work and now I'm earning loads of money. That's not the type of thing you're going to say to anyone. People are interested in the crazy, the stupid things that have happened, the things that are worth talking about. So it's something that I definitely enjoy speaking about.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess it shows people that everyone else is human. It shows the human side,
exactly,
rather than just being robotic and perfect all the time. It's nice to see the human side.
Exactly, because, well, certainly, I don't know if it can be something as simple as someone coming round for dinner and you didn't know what to do. There was an awkward moment. Everyone can relate to that. Like, everyone's been in that situation before of having someone around you didn't know if you had to give them a kiss to say goodbye, 2 kisses or something like that. Everyone can relate to that. So I think it just creates that bond with people when they open up and tell you these things, and it makes a conversation more interesting as well, I always think.
Yeah, it really does. Yeah, and I think I read that on your website somewhere. You said something about the awkwardness, not knowing how many kisses to give people when you greet them. I think this was before I knew you lived in Sicily, so I was like, isn't it 0? Like in the UK, do you think it would be weird to give a kiss to say hello to someone?
Well, this is something I've spoken about a lot, actually. Where, well, okay, let's talk about before Corona times, because in Italy that's changed everything. But before that, it was standard of like 2 kisses. Like, whilst I always think in England it's kind of like a grey area. Like, there's no specific rules. Whilst here, the rules are more clear. So in England, for example, if I meet a man, it's quite simple, a handshake. But if there's a girl, okay, for the first time I meet them, probably handshake. But after that, if you see them a few times, I've sometimes had people just going for a hug in England now, which I find strange. I've had the classic thing of someone going for a hug, and I think they're coming for like a kiss, and tried to like give them a kiss on the cheek and ended up like kissing their ear, and they're having that really awkward moment of like, oh my god, I've just kissed her ear. But yeah, so in the UK, yeah, that's it's a difficult one. I think I don't really know what to do now in the UK. But for example, when I go home, I see my mum. For example, I give her a kiss, like, or like close family, like my sister-in-law, like. But then once you start going out of that a little bit, then it's a grey area. I think the government should really pull their finger out and make some clear rules, I think.
Set some laws about kissing and greeting. Yeah.
Exactly.
I've never greeted anyone with a kiss before. I mean, if anyone did it to me, it would just be, whoa, what's going on here? It'd be
really? Anyone?
Weird.
So not even family?
No, I mean, my family, we're not that kind of like touchy,
Right. Okay.
kind of family. We're not like that. But yeah, I mean, specifically with friends, I find it's a bit weird. I mean, sometimes I'll hug a friend if it's been a while.
Yeah.
But I see people like kissing on TV, like celebrities. It's kind of like seen as like I guess it's like upper class, like kind of, what's the word? Sophisticated thing to do,
Right.
isn't it? To give a quick peck
Yeah.
and say hello. But so I guess maybe before Corona, you were doing this a bit more in Sicily.
Oh yeah, always. And in fact, I have often mentioned how like again in the past, end of the night, you kind of think I really want to go home, but it's less difficult to stay out for another hour than give 2 kisses to everyone here, because it was kind of like there was kind of like the rules that you had to. Whilst now with Corona, like everything's just, you can just sort of wave now. But whilst before it was, I mean, even the specific word of like salutare in Italian, which was like, I suppose, to greet someone, and the opposite. What would be the opposite of to greet someone? To say goodbye, I suppose.
Bid farewell.
Yeah, okay. And so you always
formal.
had to do that. It was like a thing, you had to do that like with everyone. And it was like, oh, for God's sake, like this is a lot of time and effort. But so yeah, so that was totally normal. But I must admit, for me, coming to Italy, that was a strange thing of that, because obviously I'd been living in the UK, like I'd lived there all of my life, and it was a strange thing. And especially for me, when I saw men doing the 2 kisses, like I was a bit like, whoa, like I kind of thought that was like something you just saw on like old mafia films. I didn't think it was like a real thing, but it is. And I must admit, I love it now. I'm very touchy-feely now.
It kind of gives a warm feeling, I guess.
Yeah, it is. And as well, it's not even really a kiss. It's kind of like your cheeks touch, and then you kind of just kiss the air and make the kiss noise, really. So yeah, but like I said, with Corona, everything's changed. And I quite enjoy the kind of fist pump now. So just like this, you see someone and just give them one of them. I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the elbow thing. I know it's probably
No.
safer, but it just
Yeah.
seems a bit
I agree.
lame. I don't know how else to say it. But
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
Yeah.
The elbow pump. Yeah, I don't like that. The fist pump, I think, is much nicer.
yeah, I mean, if you're really concerned, fist pump and then sanitize. I feel
Exactly.
like that's cooler than elbow. Right?
Exactly. Definitely.
Yeah. So you mentioned kissing someone's ear. Maybe like, have you had any other awkward, embarrassing situations when it comes to greeting? I don't know, when you first moved there or anything like that.
Yeah, because so here as well, it's a strange thing, because so like, I live like in Palermo, like so the capital of Sicily, and only in this part of Sicily, sometimes they only do 1 kiss, and I've noticed it depends what side they come. If they come like this side, then it will be you're going for 2. But if like you're in a difficult position, you're this side, then it would only be 1. This is kind of what I've noticed. But obviously I wasn't so familiar with this sometimes. So, and I sort of went for the 2 kisses. When I was sort of going for the next one, the other person was already talking to someone else. And there I am sort of like going for the next kiss. And then you have the awkward moment where they sort of turn to you and say, oh no, we're just doing 1. And you're kind of like, yeah, sure. Like head down, like I want to die kind of thing.
That's so weird. It's like all these unspoken rules that
Yeah.
you have to learn in a culture. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it works the opposite way too. Like, I didn't really realize this, but I heard that people in Japan are not very touchy. Like they don't. Again, it's a generalization. I heard that they don't like to be hugged
Right.
by people they don't know that well. And I think in the UK, it's kind of 50-50. I feel like there's maybe some American influence. I don't know. But some people can be quite huggy here when they say hello and goodbye. But, when I would meet people in Japan, I would often hug them goodbye. And I could feel their awkwardness.
You could feel them
just
saying, don't touch me.
Yeah, they
get
kind of
off me.
stiffen up. Like, what's going on? What's happening? I was like, oh, I shouldn't have done this. It's just a habit, but
Yeah. And again, so when I was working at an English school here, I often saw new teachers arriving from the UK, and were very much like that because maybe Sicilians are quite touchy-feely, and some of my colleagues who had come straight from the UK were all a bit like, oh no, don't touch me kind of thing. But yeah, like I said, I've kind of just grown used to it now, and I think when I go home, I'm a bit too touchy-feely with my friends, and they're all like, get off me, stop touching me.
Sending the wrong messages, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, I thought this could be fun to talk about embarrassing stuff for a bit today. More generally, if I ask, what's your most embarrassed, maybe not the most, but what's a really embarrassing moment that you've had in the past? Does anything come to mind?
Oh yeah, immediately. I actually, I thought about this, but then immediately after 2 seconds, a story came to mind, which it's kind of a old but gold kind of thing. So I've mentioned this a few times on my podcast. I think I have a whole post about it, which I did when I started the podcast. So this was about 7 years ago, and it was Saturday afternoon. Went out for a few drinks with a friend. Saturday afternoon, a bit tipsy. Then we got a bit peckish, so a little bit hungry, and went to a nice Italian restaurant actually. Although this was in the UK, I think it was actually about a week or two before I moved to Sicily actually. And we went to a restaurant called, I suppose the English pronunciation would be Olio's, which is important for the rest of the story. So had a lovely meal sitting outside, which was rare, obviously what is rare in the UK. And we kind of thought, why stop now? Let's keep going. We'd already had some pasta, and I thought, right, okay, let's get some more food. Asked the waiter for the menu. He said 1 minute, and then 10 minutes passed, nothing. Asked again, 1 minute, and about 20 minutes passed. And then my friend said to me, they've forgotten about us. Let's just go. And normally I was a bit shocked. And normally, obviously, I would say, no, that's absolutely no. But I think that the alcohol inside of me said, no, this is a good idea. So we just got up and then casually walked away, obviously without paying, which I'm not particularly proud of this. But then continued the night. Obviously we were still thinking about it a bit, but drunken night out, carried on. Then the next day, my friend called me and said, look, I think we should go back and pay. And I was a bit like, I mean, I agree we should, but we're going to look really stupid. This is going to be a really awkward situation. So I just said, look, let's just forget about it. So then carried on with my life. So that was a Saturday. And then a few days later on a Tuesday, I was at work, and I got a phone call from a girl that I hadn't spoken to in a few years. And I thought, this is strange. Why is she calling me at 4 p.m. on a Tuesday? And so obviously I said hello, and she just went straight, didn't say hello, how are you, or anything like that. She said to me, did you go to Olio's on Saturday night? And at this point, my heart sank, and I was like, yeah, I think I went there. I can't really remember why. And she said, because your picture is on Facebook. The restaurant have got a picture from the CCTV footage, put it on their page, and said, do you know these two people? They went away without paying. And I almost kind of didn't really believe it was true. And then I went on Facebook. I remember perfectly looking on my work computer and saw this post. And I just remember I was on the phone. I was just numb. I was like, And I looked, and it had been shared like over 100 times, and people were just sharing it and sharing it. And I read some of the comments, and they were unreal. They were saying like, "What scum!" So like that's a very strong word in English to say like a terrible person. So like hung up the phone, got on the train to go back to like the town where I'm from, and even when I was on the train, people were looking at their phones, and I was thinking that they might be looking at this post, like looking at a picture of me. So like went back there, basically just got on my knees and begged for forgiveness, because I think if there's one thing I am good at, it's apologizing, as one of my strengths, I think. And so luckily kind of like managed to resolve the situation. They were actually all right about it, and he actually said, let's take another picture and put this on and say everything's okay. But I was like, please, look, no more pictures, and can we just delete that post, because my mum's on Facebook and and she's going to see this. And unfortunately, it was too late, and my mum did see it, all of my friends and family. And so, yeah, so the one time I did something criminal, let's say, it felt like I was on America's most wanted list. And so, yeah, an extremely, extremely embarrassing situation for me, because like I said, I'm from that town. So many people saw that, and so many people probably I don't even speak to anymore saw that and must have just thought, what a terrible human being, which I mean essentially is true. It's a terrible thing to do, but yeah, I think one time in my life I should be given some leeway to say like, let's let him off this time.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I love that.
Yeah,
I didn't see it going there, but I think that's everyone's worst nightmare, like to have their kind of moment of, what would you call it, a lapse
shame.
of judgment, moment of shame,
yeah,
publicized and yeah,
oh my god,
on Facebook.
And in fact, because like I said, it was like a couple of weeks before I was going to Sicily, I called my friend and said, look, this is the situation, what are we going to do? And my friend's got like a really important job at a bank, like, and he said, well, you go and sort it out because you're leaving soon anyway. So basically I had to leave the country because of this. I'm like a fugitive.
That's why you're in Sicily then.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, it's kind of interesting though, because honestly, if I had seen that photo and the post, I wouldn't have commented, of course, but I would have thought like, oh, terrible people.
Yeah,
you know?
I agree.
But,
I agree. So
I mean,
I would have as well. 100%.
Hearing your side of the story kind of gives me a bit more empathy, and I kind of maybe, you know, it's not a good thing, but I kind of see how it happened, and
yeah, exactly.
Alcohol. So it's kind of, maybe in the future, if I see that, I might think, yeah, maybe there's some reason behind it. Yeah. Maybe I shouldn't be too quick to judge. You know?
And they did, honestly, like we asked maybe even more than 2 times and had to wait so long. And I remember again when I spoke to my friend and told him, he said, well, tell them it was their fault because we had to wait like 30 minutes. And I was like, look, we need to resolve this situation. I don't want to get into an argument and make anything worse. So that's not the tactic I'm going for. I'm going for the tactic of apologizing a lot. And luckily it worked. And I said, like, they were okay with this. And the thing is, that is a really nice restaurant and it's still there. And so I don't know, about a year or so when I was at home ago, some of my friends were going there and they said, do you want to come? And I was like, no, I can't. I never, I mean, I don't know if they would recognize me, but I don't even want to risk it. Even if there's like a 1% risk, even when I walk past there, I kind of walk past and put my head sort of like cover my face kind of thing. It's a nightmare.
Yeah, that's funny. I think alcohol is often the cause behind a lot of these embarrassing stories.
Oh yeah,
right?
Of course. Yeah.
I was trying to think of some to share because obviously I knew we were speaking about it, and I think a lot of them have either been forgotten due to alcohol or just blocked from my memory because it's too traumatic. But
yeah, what I actually do for the podcast now is actually make notes. Well, I just write like a small, just like a quick note to myself. So, for example, let's see what I've got now. Okay, so just for small things, because nothing interesting happens to anyone, really, does it? We all live boring lives in some ways, and I'm no different. But I mean, just looking at this, I always, just so I've got something to talk about on the podcast, I've just wrote down how I got an email from someone recently asking if I would participate in a seminar. And so I said, yeah, okay, I'm happy to do that. Sounds good. And they said to me, it's going to be every Saturday and Sunday for all of December. And I was like, well, that's a bit much. Like, can we not just do one day? And then they responded and said, yeah, sure. Are you free on the 25th of December? And I was like, that's Christmas Day.
Where are they from?
Yeah, I think it was from Indonesia, but still, they obviously know that I'm in Europe and stuff, and I was a bit like, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not sure of my exact plans yet for the 25th of December, but I'm pretty sure I don't want to be doing a seminar about teaching English because it's Christmas Day. So I constantly write about these stupid things that happen constantly in my life. But like you said, because if you don't kind of make a note of them, you just forget about them, because it's just these small stupid things that happen. But for the podcast mainly, I always just write stuff down just so I can share some of the things on the podcast and make these uneventful things actually quite interesting, because they're the type of things, again, that do happen to everyone on a daily basis.
Yeah, totally. I think the ones that do stand out are maybe the more like traumatic ones. Like, I think your one was a good example.
Yeah, that's not
story.
something that happens to me on a daily basis.
Yeah,
no. But lots of other stuff on the podcast is just general stuff that happens on a daily basis.
Yeah. One that I remember, I think probably a lot of people have had this, where after a night out, you get the train home, because,
I can probably actually even guess where this is going, but
it's already obvious, isn't it? Because I'm from a small town which didn't have any clubs, so we had to get the train to the nearest city.
Okay.
And they would often do trains. The first train would be like 5 o'clock in the morning, so we'd stay up until 5, get the train home, and of course I fell asleep on the train. So like, I was trying to keep myself awake. I sat on the floor because I didn't want to get too comfy on the seat.
Yeah,
I knew that would keep me awake. I should have just stood up, right? But
that's what I do actually when I get the train back from London to Essex. I stand up, or another tactic is hold my phone and set an alarm for like 20 minutes, and I hold it and I put it as vibrate as well. Yeah,
that's a good idea. Yeah, set an alarm for before your stop. That's a good one. Yeah. But I didn't do this, and I fell asleep, and I woke up like a few stops past my town. It's still dark, 5 a.m. or something, and the staff, they had seen my ticket, so they knew where I was supposed to get off. And when they realised I was still there, they were just like laughing at me, or the train staff. And I was, to make it worse, I think it was Halloween actually, and I was in like some kind of fancy dress, so I just looked ridiculous.
Dressed up as a monster,
zombie or something. Yeah. So I had to like get off the train, and when I got back on the train, it was, some of the staff were the same. I don't know quite how it worked, if they like got off and got back on the train at the next stop, but one of the staff members was the same, and they were laughing at me because I was going back, and she was explaining to the other staff, like, don't give him a ticket because he missed his stop. And people starting to go to work at this point, because I had to wait at the station for a while, and it's just so embarrassing when everyone's like getting up, going to work, and you're like a zombie trying to get home.
Yeah, I mean, it would be embarrassing anyway, because I think you can always tell when someone's been out since the night before, or even just looking at them. But yeah, dressed as a zombie probably didn't help matters. But you were lucky in some ways. Luckily, it has happened to me, but not so bad. I only like the next stop, and I then come home. But some of my friends have woken up like miles away, and then for the last train, then there are no trains back, so they've had to either like sleep at the train station, or like get a hotel and then pay lots of money for the train the next day. So you were lucky that it was already the morning, so you could actually then come back.
That's true. I did have one night where I missed the train, and I had to sleep in the stairwell of a multi-story car park.
Sure, but that was comfortable.
That was horrible. It's the coldest night of my life. But
yeah,
I think I was like 18, so don't judge me anymore.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if we could relate it to language learning as well. So I often ask people the question, if they've had any embarrassing language learning experiences, because I think it's fun to make light of it and
Of course,
to
yeah,
laugh
I
at the
agree.
mistakes.
Yeah.
So I know you're learning Italian. I don't know what level
Yeah, I
you
mean,
are. I don't know. any
My
other
Italian's
languages.
at a good level. So my wife is Italian. I speak to her in Italian every day. I speak to her family. I mean, I haven't got any real problems, but I mean, like anyone, I make mistakes. So I obviously still learning. But yeah, in fact, this a very embarrassing thing happened to me fairly recently. I think it was this year. And I was buying some bread at the bakery, which is pretty much like under our house. And there's like a specific name for every type of bread. There's like a million different types of bread there, and each one's got a specific name. And this one type of bread is called a spiga. And every time I go there, I mean, that's always like the one that I buy as well. And every time I always go there, I always think that does sound like another word, which is figa, which is like vagina, basically. And every time I always thought like, oh, like don't say figa, don't say figa. And like every time I've ever been in there. And then once I must have I was just sort of daydreaming, and then they said, "What do you want?" And then I just said like, "Oh, like a figa." So like I basically just said, "Oh, a vagina," and then the place just erupted with laughter. And yeah, I felt like an absolute idiot. I mean, they obviously know that they know me because I go there regularly, and they know I'm not Italian. But I always think this is a interesting thing as a language learner. A word that sounds similar to another word, in your mind, you think those words are similar. But when when you speak the language, like people have done this to me a few times in English, got words confused with another word which sounds like a word. I can't think of an example at the moment, but when they say the incorrect word, I really have no idea what they mean. Like I don't make the connection of like, oh, that sounds like this, so they must mean this.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it's got a completely different meaning, for example, vagina and bread, like the meanings are very different. I don't think you make that connection immediately to think, oh, that he probably wanted to say, for example, in this case, I would probably want to say spiga. That it's just like, why does he?
They had no idea.
Yeah, they were just like, why, what? So yeah, that was extremely embarrassing because, like I said, it was in my mind, like, don't say it, because I think when you do that, if I say, for example, don't think of an elephant, like the first thing you're going to think of is an elephant kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I had this in my mind for so long, and then one day, yeah, I fell for it and it went badly. Yeah.
It's a really interesting point. I guess it's because as a native speaker, you think more about the meaning of the word. And when you're learning,
exactly.
You focus more on the sound.
Yeah,
so there's that.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah,
it happened just last week. My partner, who isn't English, she was talking about my dead bugs. She won't like me for saying this, but do you know what that could be? Dead bugs?
Maybe bed bugs. I'm trying to think. What did she mean?
Talk about the hairstyle I used to have, because believe it or not, I'm bald now. When I was in my early 20s, I had long hair and it was dreadlocks.
Right. And she wanted to say dreadlocks.
Yeah, and she thought it was dead bugs. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I didn't quite get it, but yeah, it's just the sound. It's going to sound similar, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, as a native speaker, you don't make that connection. Like, for example, if someone makes a mistake with the verb or something, so then you will obviously know what they want to say.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's a completely different word, maybe that sounds similar, you're kind of like, well, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Again, a similar kind of thing. This was quite early on in my Italian learning stage, and I said to someone whose brother had just had a baby, and I knew this person's mum, and I said, I wanted to say, your mum seems happy, which is felice. And I remember specifically, even in my book of words, felice was next to facile, which is easy. And I was like, well, like your mum looks like really easy. And which in Italian has got the same meaning in English of like, that kind of means like easy to take to bed kind of thing.
Easy to take back home. Yeah. That's not good.
which wasn't obviously what I wanted to say. So yeah, I had a similar thing then of like the word which was similar to me, but to them they were just like what? Like what are you talking about?
Were they offended, or did they assume you meant something else?
I mean, because at that point, especially my Italian was not very good at all. So they obviously knew whatever it was I wanted to say, it wasn't that.
Yeah.
So yeah. So but yeah, like you said, it's good to sort of make light of them and enjoy them. And again, that's why I share these things on the podcast, just to show that these things happen. One other thing that I often show as well when I'm on other people's podcasts and stuff is this here, where you can see there's actually a grammatical error because there should be 2 apostrophes here.
I see that a lot, though. I see one a lot. I guess it's not right.
Well, that's what I thought, I think. Yeah, but it's not obviously correct. And I mean, I sound so stupid, but even on my logo, there's only one. So I'm the only learning English channel with a grammatical mistake in the title of the name. And honestly, maybe even a year had passed, and then I just hadn't even thought about it. And then someone wrote me like a really offensive comment, and was like, there should be another apostrophe. And I was like, oh my God, yeah. But then I just leave that now, and I like to even talk about it because to show people, mistakes happen.
Yeah.
Like,
I think no one really minds. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this guy minded a lot, but generally, I don't think people are so bothered about apostrophes.
I think for those who can't see, by the way, because I think most people listen to the audio version. So behind you, you've got your title, rock and roll.
Yeah.
But rather than and roll, it's just the N, letter N.
Yeah.
And I think like fish and chips, right? Usually we would have an apostrophe either side, kind of to signal that we've got the A and the D missing.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, often I see even fish and chips only one apostrophe. So
yeah, which is
why? Yeah,
not correct, because the apostrophe is supposed to like where there's a missing letter, and obviously there are 2 missing letters because it's rock and roll, and I've only got 1 apostrophe.
Yeah, I never noticed. I suppose it looks almost like, if you have 2, it looks like almost like a quote. Like,
yeah, also what I thought. I think it just it looks better, I think, visually to have 1, but not grammatically correct, which is annoying. But like I said, it would be easy to change that, but I now decide not to, just to show that everybody makes mistakes, including native speakers. This is something else I try to talk about a lot. So not just us in English, but everyone, whatever your language is, I guarantee that you make mistakes, because when you're speaking, generally, obviously, it's not a case of actually not knowing, but when you're speaking, you're changing idea and you say things, and then things just come out sometimes. When I, in fact, listen back to the podcast, so either I make a mistake or my friends make a mistake, and I think, oh God, sometimes when I'm like writing the transcript, I think, oh, that's awful. Sometimes I mention it, but it's just a natural thing. But I think when it's a foreign language, and I include myself in this, we're much more harsh on ourselves for making mistakes. You kind of think, sometimes you say something, you think, oh God, why did I say that? I know it's like that. But in reality, it actually happens in your native language as well. So there shouldn't really be so harsh on yourself in a foreign language.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think a lot of people have almost, I would say it's a misconception that maybe it's just from too many textbooks and grammar lessons that we should sound like a robot, like perfect.
Yeah,
because I get messages or comments pretty much every day saying, Michael, you said this wrong. You didn't pronounce the TH here properly, and things like that. And it's just like, there's many ways to say different things. You know? I just said now there is many ways. Should be there. There are many ways, right?
Yeah.
Common things like that we always kind of change.
Yeah.
And I think that's just natural language, really, isn't it? Language isn't about being perfect.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And another example that comes to my head, and this was a friend of mine who was an English teacher, and I told him, so I said, I've bought a tent. And that was going to be my phrase, like obviously use the present perfect. Now I've bought a tent, and then I don't know why. Just obviously in that second, I wanted to tell him when, and I said I've bought a tent last week, and he was like, "I've bought a tent last week. Like what's that?" But that's just a perfect example of like the ideas in your mind changing, and then something coming out of your mouth which isn't actually correct. But because that was obviously my native language, I didn't feel so stupid. But when I make a mistake in Italian, I often then think, oh, I'm so stupid. But we do that in our native languages as well.
Yeah, it's just, as we said before, maybe different kinds of mistakes. Like maybe an Italian wouldn't confuse the bread, and
Yeah, and the vagina, yeah.
I wanted to talk about, we don't have too much time, but maybe two words that I think, two concepts that might be interesting, and ask you about them. So the first one is related to the word vicarious. So do you know what I mean by vicarious embarrassment?
I actually had to look up that word. I often say on the podcast how any word with more than 2 syllables, basically, I don't know. That's about as far as my vocabulary goes. So I had to look up that word. So like when you can feel someone else's embarrassment.
Yeah, I think very often we have the phrase, I'm going to live vicariously through you. I hear that a lot, which is like, I can't have fun, but I'm going to enjoy the fact that you're having fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, vicarious embarrassment. Yeah, someone else does something embarrassing and you feel such strong empathy that you are embarrassed as well because of what they did.
Yeah. Well, so when you mentioned that, the first thing that came to my mind is, so again, with close friends, this is more of the enjoyment of when something bad happens to friends, of seeing them suffer. And as obviously I'm talking about stupid things here, like if something serious has happened to a friend, then I don't take enjoyment from that. But if it's a trivial thing, then of course I love to see my friends suffer. A friend of mine who's often on the podcast, actually, we spoke about this on one episode, when it was his stag do, so which is the party before you get married, and we went to Cambridge and we were like going down the canals in like some boats that we'd rented, and he thought it was really funny after being in the pub for a few hours to jump between the boats.
Ooh.
And obviously you can see where this is going, and fell, and then was like holding onto a rope of the boat, and yeah, I mean everyone that was there was enjoying this a lot. And I was actually suggesting let's just go back to where we had to go, which was about half hour away on the boat, and just pull him along. But luckily, I suppose he was allowed to then to get back. Like we had to like go to the shore, and he had to like get back. But yeah, so things like that, yeah, I take generally enjoyment from more than anything else.
So actually, what you said is the opposite. So I would say vicarious embarrassment is when you feel embarrassed, like the same feeling
exactly,
for someone else. But yours is the opposite. You felt good about it.
Yeah, of course.
Do you? I can test you now. Do you know what that would be called? There's like a term for that, which is actually a German word, but it's kind of becoming more popular in English.
If it's got more than 2 syllables, then definitely no.
I'm going to check because the pronunciation is difficult. It's like Schadenfreude. Have you heard of that?
Absolutely. No, that's an English word that exists in English.
I'm not sure if it's in a dictionary, but
Right.
It's a German word, but I hear it used in English a lot these days.
No, you know what? I have heard of this now. I can't remember when. I'm not just saying this to like say, oh yeah, no, I did know.
Avoid embarrassment.
No, but it rings a bell. Certainly not something that I would use. But yes, you're right. I have heard of this, and I remember seeing that quite recently. It must have been. I remember thinking we really need that in English because that's something a feeling that I have a lot.
Yeah, it's a concept that just exists everywhere, but we don't have a word for it in English. So I guess that's why we use it. So, like, I was trying to think of examples. I couldn't think of any from my real life, from my friends, but like, I think we all love this. Like, we all love watching these videos. I saw one video. I think it was like an eating competition or a drinking competition or something.
Yeah,
I don't know if you've seen this, and really weird that they had like a pit below the stage where the contestants were, filled with rubbish and mostly vomit. So when people would drink, I don't know if it might have been alcohol. When they drank too much, they would vomit. One man kind of like gave up, like, no, I can't do any more. And as he was walking off, he fell into the vomit pit. And probably it was the worst day of his life. Everyone was laughing at him. And I really had this feeling of Schadenfreude. Like, I felt like a horrible person, but I kind of felt like happy that he fell.
Of course. Otherwise, what's the video of you just seeing someone then just like walking off? But yeah, no, yeah, I love these moments. And again, obviously assuming everything's fine. For example, when my friend fell into this canal, I mean, he hurt his leg a little bit. He had a bit of a scratch on his leg, but nothing. Like if he had ended up in hospital, then obviously I wouldn't have been laughing. Then that would have been a different situation.
Yeah, there's a limit.
Yeah, of course. But when it's just these type of things, then but this is what I always think. I enjoy laughing at them, and in a way, I enjoy it when they laugh at me for these things as well. It's all part of the game.
That's a good point. I think laughing eases the tension, right? Like if you said vagina in the bakery and then people just went like, they kind of looked really disappointed. I think that would have made it worse because like, please, someone laugh, ease the tension.
I agree, and I always think laughing at yourself and saying what everyone else is thinking helps. So I'll give you an example. I remember probably the last competitive game of football I played. It was probably just before I came to Sicily. Actually, I was about 28, and a friend asked me to play for his football team, and they were all very large men, and I'm the complete opposite. I'm quite short, skinny. So the shirts they had were all like double XL. So I was the new person there already. That can be quite embarrassing in the changing room. They threw me a shirt, and I put it on, and obviously it was like like when you're like 5 years old and you wear your dad's shirt, and it looked like that. And then it was kind of like silence because no one really knew me. But then I thought I need to say something here. So I jokingly said, "Oh, have you got a bigger size? I think I could do something a bit bigger here." And that immediately, then everyone then laughed because I was obviously laughing at myself. Whilst otherwise it was like an awkward moment of everyone like, "Oh God, did you see how stupid that, like how he looked in that shirt?" So I always think it's better to laugh at yourself than then other people laughing at you, kind of thing. So
it's almost like you gave them permission to laugh, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice.
So yeah, that's what I try to do.
Maybe one final question, because I think a lot of people that listen are interested in British culture. I don't know when the last time you visited was.
Quite in August, so quite recently, a few months ago. Yeah.
So you haven't forgotten our ways yet.
No, not totally. Although I have definitely become Italianized. There are some things now which I kind of think, oh, that's strange now, like in the UK, because I've become Italianized. For example, carpets I find a bit strange now because they don't really have them in Italy so much.
Good point.
I kind of feel just a stupid example, but yeah, I've still got enough of knowledge of British culture, I think.
Yeah, carpets in the bathroom are the worst.
Oh,
people are insane to have that.
That's unbelievable. Yeah, I still carpets in the bedroom is okay in the UK, but in like the living room, I kind of feel it's a bit strange now.
Yeah, I prefer wood.
Because in Italy they look at that of like, oh my God, that's so disgusting that British people have carpets and don't have bidets to wash their private parts.
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of the world should adopt, to be honest. But
yeah, I agree.
Well, the question was, what do you think is the best way to embarrass a a British person?
Yeah. So I thought about this, and well, I think it's similar in most parts of the world, really, to embarrass someone. I mean, if you ask them something very private, then obviously that's going to embarrass them. I think in the UK in particular, well, it's difficult to say actually, because when I base my knowledge of the world, I base my knowledge on the UK and Italy, because these are the two countries that I know about. And so I often think, oh, in the rest of the world they do this, but in reality it's only Italy. So I often say, oh, like in other places, and by other places I mean one place, because I obviously haven't got this such worldwide knowledge. But I think in the UK in particular, I think, so again, certainly in comparison to Italy, people are very sensitive about money. So like if you said to someone, how much money do you earn in the UK? That would be like, oh. I mean, in Italy, it's not particularly polite, but like it's happened to me quite a few times here. Like, I mean, probably like 5 times. Like, but whilst in the UK, that's never happened to me. Like, no one would ever dream of doing that because it's such a personal thing, I think, in the UK. What do you think?
I mean, I would have said that if you didn't. I
Right.
think money's a big one because I get a lot. I mean, obviously, I speak to people from all around the world with my work, and people sometimes ask me, like, how much do you get paid, or do you have a lot of money? Depending on where they're from, some cultures it's more normal. I'm like, whoa, we don't talk about that. Even between my friends, like my best friends,
I agree.
we rarely talk about money. It's kind of, sometimes we'll bring it up, but there's a feeling of awkwardness in the air when we talk about it.
No, I totally agree. So yeah, like my best friends who I've known for like 30 years, I would never dream of saying like how much money do they earn. Even when, for example, they buy a house. One of my friends bought a house, and I said like, oh, like, do you mind if I ask how much you paid, kind of thing. Like even that, it was, but like that's like public knowledge. I could have looked at that on a website, but even to say that was like and that was only because he's a really, really close friend. I asked. Otherwise, it's like, I bought a house, okay. But yeah, even asking how much things cost, how much someone paid for like a car is like considered like a rude thing to do.
Yeah, I guess it gives you like an indication of maybe you're kind of mentally, what's the word, like arranging them in a hierarchy, like, oh, I'm better than you because I earn more money, and it kind of
maybe
that's part of it or something. You don't want to do that. But I like the phrase you said, so I think this is useful for listeners. First of all, maybe avoid topics of money in England, probably many other countries too, but in the UK I think it's
definitely
a good one.
Yeah.
And if you want to ask a close friend, what did you say? Would you mind if I
asked you?
Blah, 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 blah. I think that's a good way to phrase it.
Yes, because otherwise, it feels so wrong. And like, I think it's where you need to know someone well to even ask that question. I mean, again, you can ask someone in the most polite way possible, but if I said to you, for example, would you mind telling me how much money you've got in your bank account? Like, there's never a good way for that, for example. But yeah, so I would say the best thing to do in Britain is avoid it. Like I said, I think in most parts of the world, like I said, in Italy, it's similar.
But probably Europe, it's similar.
But still not as much as in the UK, because like I said, people have asked me that, and I was a bit like, ooh, like, yeah.
It's funny, isn't it? But yeah, good answer. Well, maybe we can finish up here, but before we do, would you like to tell people where they can find out more about you?
Yeah, sure. So my website, rockandrollenglish.com, and remember that's the letter N, roll.com. And so the social media channels, well, in fact, I only do 2 because otherwise it becomes a nightmare trying to manage all of them, which are Facebook and Instagram. So again, Rock and Roll English, if you search for that, you'll find me. And like on all major podcast apps, Rock and Roll English. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. And hopefully, I don't know if it's out now, but they can hear the episode we did together on your podcast too.
Yeah, it most probably will be. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe, I don't know, they might be bored of me by now, but you can start with that one and listen to the others as well.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. It's been really fun to chat with you. And
thanks for having me. It's been great.
We'll have to do it again.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, take care.
Take care. You have been listening to the Level Up English podcast. If you would like to leave a question to be answered on a future episode, then please go to levelupenglish.school/podcast. That's levelupenglish.school/podcast. And I'll answer your question on a future episode. Thanks for listening.